everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Sara Ashour, and I'm a trade policy analyst at the Egyptian Ministry of Trade and Industry. I'm currently, my areas of specialization are mainly trade agreements, rules of origin, and trade facilitation. I've worked on other development issues and with non-governmental and governmental organizations, especially focusing on women's rights, health rights, and children's rights. I'm very glad to be here today and looking forward for the fruitful discussion. So I would say that indeed it was a deliberate thing, at least for the last 10 years, especially when we assumed the AU presidency in 2019. It has been very crucial, and it has mainstreaming African integration has been a huge part in most of the policies and in annual strategies for ministries or cabinets. I would say that if you also examine the history of Egypt joining regional agreements, if you go back to the COMESA or the Agadir agreement combining North African countries, you see that Egypt has been very keen to join from the beginning of actually setting out the agreement. But the thing is that with the ACFTA as well, there is a lot of interest in order to increase, the local value addition. These agreements have been there for a long time, but our question is always, why do people don't use them so much as we need and as we want? Maybe in the last 10 years, we've been focusing so much on public-private partnerships and cooperation with international organizations in order to properly educate our business communities. And because the main thing that we always hear, and being a rules of origin geek, that many businesses complain that some provisions are not understandable. If you want to do accumulation in order to be more integrated in global value chain, accumulation is needed. So as a government and as in what we do now is we try to simplify such provision for business community in order to make it more understandable for either big producers or small ones, because small SMEs contribute a huge part of our economy. So yes, it has been deliberate for a long time, but even with the statistics that you say, we dream much that we make the utility for such agreements more. That is what we want, the Africa we want that we always say. So my answer for this would be twofold. First, on the text level and on the implementation level. On the text level, we would say that the ACFTA has been a new generation of agreements that we could say that it has been negotiated during the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. And the good thing is that it has been learning from the lessons of other agreements in the continent. Of course, we do have the African tripartite, which is not enforced for now, but even negotiating that agreement that is not enforced, but also combines a lot of African countries in the region, have taught us a lot of lessons of what would work and what would not work. So that is the good part in the ACFTA, that it tried to come out with the good lessons from the past agreements. Most of the negotiators who were there were keen to do that, whether in Egypt or in other countries. But also on the implementation level, we're trying to reach another point, is that we try to simplify it more. We try to reach out for business community more. Maybe today's realities facilitate for us as maybe public servants or even trade analysts anywhere to try to reach out to business community through digital platforms and the databases online to simplify the rules in a way. We try to do handbooks that give examples on how to calculate such content values or whatever. But also it's one thing which is very important, and on a personal basis, I wish that it would be implemented on the ACFTA, is the accumulation provision. We always put that in all of our agreements, but at the end, the usage of such provision is very minimal. But I guess in my interpretation, that would be a key for actually upgrading ourselves in the global value chains and being involved in the complex value chains rather than the simple value chains. I really wish for that. In Africa, we do have different interpretation for accumulation because, there's different kinds of accumulation. But what we seek now is that we try to simplify such notions more. We try to reach out to African partners to have common understanding so we could actually be on the same page when we do the implementation very soon. So yeah, I would catch up on what Doug have said. It's first that I think that maybe trade agreements at the beginning, or provisions in generally when they were drafted in most of the agreements, not only in Africa, were not designed for changing circumstances or facing global crises. But having said that, I would say that evaluating the performance of several governments in the light of the past COVID pandemic, it's moderately okay with regards to there has been intentions from some governments to reread the text in an innovative way, and sometimes in order to find a solution. But also in some other ways, it shows the wise voice of the importance of reviewing agreements. In Africa, most of the agreement have a clause of reviewing the agreement every 5 years or something. So that's something that's good in favor of agreements not being an old, as old, and not being reviving and catching up with actually what's happening globally. I think that the agreements as such now has some provisions that helped us pass during the pandemic. If I would talk on trade facilitation aspect, I would say that there's the retrospective articles which allowed exporters to present their certificates after the export. There's a lot of arrays and acceptance. Several countries have accepted digital certificates of origin or digital documents during the pandemic, and that has helped a lot of countries. Of course, we would say that surprisingly, there's the COMESA, the TFT, the tripartite, the African tripartite have actually started before in the pandemic discussing self-certification and self-digitalization of certificates of origin, which is actually very, very relevant to how to actually face, such abrupt situation in the future. Of course, there's a lot of discussions now in defining essential goods, maybe putting lists for these essential goods that actually we would want to either exempt or provide specific trade facilitation procedures in times of crises. And maybe I would also catch up on what Olivier and Doc said, that maybe the key word, and maybe the pandemic before the pandemic, we've always viewed trade in the view of numbers, in exports, imports. But maybe the pandemic helps us more to see a human face for that, in a manner that it needs, if you want to actually build back better or provide better outcome in future crises, probably we need agile steps for harmonization on regional level, and having more regional plans on directing investment and development cooperation in the right venues, and to actually build the needed infrastructure. One last thing is that, and actually pointing out to the human face, is that maybe trade agreements and actually focusing on regional integration helps a lot for our continent in building the skills needed and creating more jobs, and that is what's actually needed from trade. I think that if we properly put our efforts in that, we could actually have a better future for the continent.